Good evening, everybody. This is Dustin with Utah News. Good to see you. Hope everybody had a fantastic Martin Luther King Day weekend, long weekend to relax. Also, we had the inauguration. It was a big day for everybody. Well, how are you feeling about that in general? Comment down below. And I've heard mixed reviews from colleagues and friends, and it was an interesting day to say the least. Very busy day, but it was a good Monday all around. I mentioned when I had my father's birthday last week, so we took him out to Bohemian Brewery for dinner. If anybody's ever been there, I highly recommend it. Absolutely, especially if you like more of the Scandinavian style. Plus, they have great beer. I won't lie. But getting into that, we've had a good trend going lately with some of our housing topics, immigration, different reforms coming in that way. We'd like to continue that because it's a bit more of a dive all the way around. So we bring you these segments to get a little deeper into each area of it. And today I want to actually really go into some of just the know-how overall of HOAs. A lot of people have HOAs, but there's also three types. We'll cover a little bit about that, HOAs versus COAs versus a POA, and make sure everybody knows the difference for one. For two, do you live in an HOA? We've got a good amount that have HOA segments in their communities versus not. And one of the old adages I always heard about HOAs in general was the idea that they want to keep up the property value in the area and make sure things are maintained and set to a certain standard to bring up the property value or at least hold that value and keep the community in a decent style, which is good. I love that thought. And then, of course, there are the cons of it, which we'll go into a little bit. And with that, you have the COAs, which is Condominium Owners Association. So similar to an HOA, just for the different property types. And then you have a POA. Now, POAs cover a bit more of the developmental areas between residential and commercial facilities. I personally never heard of a POA until I was looking into this for this video. But POAs are designed to help keep the property value between the businesses and the community for an entire area more so. But generally, if you back up out of that, what does an HOA really do? HOA, COA, POA. All the way around, you could simply look at it as kind of an insurance transfer. Just I say that because insurance is defined as a transfer of risk, whereas an HOA, a COA, and a POA, what they're designed to do is when you pay your taxes, the municipality or the city that you live in should be taking care of certain things in your area. So it transfers that responsibility in a lot of different ways, not all of it, not 100%, to a board or a group, a city council, sometimes even a major business that runs multiple HOAs in different areas. That can be a really good thing. Again, a lot of HOAs I've seen have just pristine lawns and their mailboxes are all in order. Their trees are always trimmed, and the power lines are always kept out of way, so there's no fire hazards. And yeah, it's generally thought of as a good thing. I've also seen a lot of cons to it as well. Again, if you're in Utah or anywhere watching this, do you live in an HOA? And what are your opinions? Please comment down below. Secondly, with the HOAs, we're going to go into a few articles locally and some cases. One of them is some of the cons to it as well. Probably more so some of the con reports than pros, but I do want to hear the pro stories. A lot of what I've heard from some followers that I have is their pros were basically make sure you read your document in its entirety in the HOA document. When you move into a location, they give you that document as full disclosure to make sure you understand what you're getting into. Common sense, right? So read your document, of course, and understand what you're agreeing to. If that's something you choose to do, absolutely go ahead. Make sure you read the fine print like anything. Not everybody does, so some it might come as a surprise. Now the cons. Cons, of course, can be fees, rising housing costs. They can also adjust those fees on you, maybe penalties and steep fines. The transferability might go from a person to a company back to a shell company, so you could say, back to a different entity. Those are a little bit we'll cover here today. I've also seen reports in the area too. One of the housing items I wanted to touch on first before we dive more into the HOAs is condominiums. Now, everybody's seen these reports about immigration, our population density, families versus living single. And this is something I've noticed in person as well. How many condominiums have you seen lately? Aside from maybe downtown, there's a few, of course. That's kind of a common place for a condominium is in the metro area. But overall, I used to have a lot of friends that lived in condominiums. Now I see it's either multi-level housing units, townhomes, apartment complexes, or if they're lucky enough to have a home on a small plot of land. Most of them don't really have a yard anymore. And one of the articles we were looking into is Building Salt Lake is one of these article sources is that nobody's building condos anymore. They literally state that in the article. And we want to know why. And a lot of this really goes into the share of attached condominiums as well as single condominiums used to make up about 20% of all attached housing. Okay. Now the share of those condos rose 53%. And this is back figure 2005. Okay. Coming forward, it has decreased drastically. And one of the items they put out here, there's a little image, hopefully, where we can show this on camera, is the demographic decline of America. And what it shows generally is households with children versus people that live alone. Now, the people living alone has gone from this is 1965 all the way to 2020. And it's a pretty steady line. And it's sets off, it's got a bit of a decrease after 2005 and stays more of an average area, whereas the yellow line of people living alone, and this goes into a lot of what we had talked about in another episode on families and the birth rate decline is more people are living alone. So again, why would there not be a lot of condos? That's kind of strange. And then it goes into boomers, of course, owning the largest housing stock out there, just because, of course, the initial investment they had their family, it was kind of a family hand me down, was having that property. So good thing there. But again, we're seeing just a massive drop off in condominiums even being built. And to that being said, it's one of the quotes here, and this comes from Ray Ward, one of the representatives in Bountiful, saying that our industry it's not providing housing opportunities for those who want to live in urban centers long term and build wealth. Okay, while that's fair, urban centers, of course, and you figure your metro and then urban and suburban, you'll figure out your area that you're living in. Well, some people do, some people don't. But again, why the drop off in condominiums? They were typically seen as a classy environment to live. So I find that really strange that the drastic drop off in these condominiums being built or people even living in them. But again, goes into borrowing costs, interest rates, probably a lot to it if you look around. Now, one of the items I do want to touch on before we go into the HOAs in general is housing costs overall. So quite a few videos I've seen locally, some internationally, or not internationally, I apologize, interstate, some back east, like North Carolina area, Georgia, Los Angeles. And I would have to agree. Have you noticed that I remember growing up, my home was built out of brick and cement. It was a pretty good fortified unit. I wouldn't say it was like a castle, but it was pretty sturdy. It was built really well. Good construction work. The walls were insulated. You could have the stereo on full blast downstairs and be playing pool, and nobody could hear you upstairs. Now, everything is literally, one of the gentlemen in the video that I watched today, it is basically duct tape and wafer board. And it's true, plastic piping, because of coding updates, people say it's more convenient, things of that nature. Sure, you've got PVC and what is it, PEX piping, which is convenient, easily replaceable. Well, I grew up in a home with galvanized steel and copper, which the galvanized steel, of course, is not as easy to replace, but it's also a lot more durable. Plus, if you were to use certain things to clean out the pipes, it can withstand it. Funny story. There was a mixture. I'm not going to say it on here just because I don't want anybody trying it. There was a mixture you could do to clean out galvanized steel piping, clear out any clog in the house. It was perfect. Um, well, I had a friend that tried it. And unfortunately, the home they were in at the time had the PVC piping, and it actually ate through the piping. So a bit of a problem. They had leaks everywhere. So don't try it and don't even look up that mixture in a modern home. And then you have the PEX piping, which is the well, I wouldn't say transverse. I'm mixing up my words here. Pretty pliable material, very flexible. So you can mold it in whatever shape, seal it up. So it's really handy, really quick to use. Personally, I feel it's great in a garden setting as far as to use. But again, the quality of that housing has gone down while costs for everything have gone up. That was my point I was getting to. So thanks for being patient. Is with this wafer board and duct tape homes, we're now paying 450, $500,000 for these same homes. I would agree. So I've been a homeowner for 13 years. The home I was in was after the 2008 crisis, and I was very fortunate to have found my house at that time because rates were still fairly low, and I bought it for around 200,000. Sure, if I had known the market's a little bit better, great, I might have been able to wait and found something a little bit more sturdy. But it's a cute home. I like it. It's been great. It helped me raise my son. Whereas this same house now, if you look it up on Zillow or Redfin, any type of real estate website, is targeted range close to 475 to $500,000. That's unheard of. And then also with 6 or 7% interest rates would mean your mortgage payment on the current house I own would be about $2,500 per month. Now, most houses, apartments, and condos, here goes the affordability thing, and then we're going to dive more into these HOAs, is with prices out there currently, you have a home with a $2,500 mortgage, let's say, and then you're paying an HOA fee on top of that to keep your neighborhood nice. Well, it's supposed to hold the value of that property in the neighborhood and provide services that you may not have time for, or you just want to live in an area that's going to maintain a standard of appearance to keep your property value in place. That's the idea, right? One of the videos I watched today was a research done in an area of North Carolina, was the actual value of the homes with an HOA did not show that they kept the value versus a home that's without an HOA. There wasn't much of a difference. And not to show one does better than the other, but just that there really wasn't much of a difference. And what they did see is with an HOA, unless you do read the fine print, you might be in for kind of a horror story. So that's where we get into this a little bit. And we can go into cost of property and housing a little bit later because it's not really the focus of this context, but it does play a part when these HOAs are in there. And you'll see why in a bit. One of them I was going into another article, of course, and this is local, obviously. So you might be familiar with the Daybreak area. I am. I have a way I refer to it. My friends probably know, but it's a great community property area. Got some vibrant colors, and you've got the pond there. And it used to be a big attraction for fireworks, and I've heard recently some problems with that and events in the area, making sure that people that don't live there can't park there anymore. Fair, they're paying a fee that should be, their area. I can understand that. Now, if you dig a little deeper, and this was some of the cons of living in that area just because of the HOAs in place. And this was done, got to give her credit. Melissa Ballman was an article out there. She's a local realtor, and she was speaking to the cons of living in Daybreak. Well, it's not to say there aren't a lot of pros. It's a cute area, nice environment. So don't take any of this negatively. Just in her article was talking about some of the fines, some of them pretty steep for the HOA. And one of them was $25,000. That was the headline of it. So of course we dug into it. $25,000, that's a steep fine. But now in going into this, and this just is one little part of their HOA talks. Now, when you get to buying a property in Daybreak, they do have in their agreement not to use the property as a rental, Airbnb, things of that nature. And the rules that you're supposed to live in Daybreak, be a resident in the home for 12 months before you can even think about using it as a rental property. Okay, so they do allow you to, but you have to be there for at least a year as a resident owner. Now, if you break that rule, you can pay this fine. And they will impose that you have to show proof that you've been living there for that time as an owner occupant. There are a lot of investors and people I know that have run Airbnbs and rentals, but they've never lived in the unit they own and wouldn't be able to provide that proof. So it makes it a really uninvestable area, and that's a steep fine. Or even as a second home, say you want to travel to Utah, and that's just an area you want to have. If you're not living there literally for 12 months consecutively, you could be imposed to these fines. So when you get to that table, you have to actually sign the affidavit for that. And not everybody reads these documents. So again, be sure to read them. If anybody bought a home, you understand that closing document. I mean, it's almost as thick as the Bible. You've got all these closing documents you've got to go through and sign and initial. And everybody that's done it with a notary, sometimes they'll skim through it. But of course, you have the opportunity to stop on them. Hey, I'm going to take my time and read it. So do take your time. Also would be opposed to flipping. You can't buy one in the Daybreak area, remodel it, renovate it, and flip it, especially within that time frame. Not going to happen. So that $25,000 fine, pretty steep, in my opinion. I wouldn't be willing to pay it at all. And that's just in Daybreak. And we have a lot of just different factors. And this is locally in Utah, of course. Want to make sure we point this out. So I have it pulled up to give some of the details in this article too, is in Bountiful. And this is just going with the rising cost of everything. I will go back. There was another video that mentioned the key phrase that I pointed out too about how homes are built and the quality or lack thereof and the enormous price we're paying for them. It really does go to suit the phrase, and it kind of convinced me of this even more so, is that you will own nothing and be happy. Look into that if you'd like. I'm not going to go into that too much right now. But in Bountiful, if you look at this, it's the fee increases over time. Now, HOAs, as well as taxes, what that's supposed to do, when we were talking about this earlier, the services that your municipality should provide by your taxes, or could provide, it's kind of transferred over to that HOA to do for you, or at least require you to do it in the neighborhood. Now, this is fairly recent, and it's concerning just because this is Bountiful. Bountiful is a cute area. I love going up that area, and of course, you go through it all the time if you're going up to Lagoon, any one of our centers up there for recreation, going up to Ogden, etc. It's a very quaint city. I love Bountiful. It's so pretty right up there on the mountain. One of them is that they're facing a potential fee increase on their HOA. This is insane. Now, I remember as a little younger, I could get an apartment for $600-700 a month. So $800 a month increase just in your HOA. Not to mention if your local taxes go up, your mortgage may increase as well. I know mine did just for the house I own. I don't have an HOA, but my mortgage went up $100 a month. They're saying that this is due to insurance costs going, and this is steep. Get this. The insurance costs rising from $17,000 to $108,000. And that's for the insurance cost. So this goes into a little bit about LA. I watched a podcast yesterday, or no, it was today actually, in regards to Los Angeles fires and some of the disasters and coming out of that, of course. So when these insurance carriers, there's some clauses in it, I guess, and it depends on the state. So make sure you're aware of these, but they will end up having to cover the cost of the home to rebuild them. Now, I'm not going to say who is responsible for those costs because I don't know the exact details. Now, when they are rebuilt, though, considering the area and what's happened, they'll sell for an enormous price, but then they're no longer insurable. Now, when they're no longer insurable, you can't resell the home after you bought it. So you're stuck with a home that has an enormous value you're paying taxes on that no insurance company is going to touch. That kind of goes into this. They increase the insurances 17,000 to 108,000. When an insurance company is raising that value that much, I mean, what incidents have we really had in Bountiful that require or even deem that necessary? I'd like to know. Something we could really look into. And some of this is we'll go into a little family here that bought a condo It's about 4 years ago, and there was a community up there. They don't like their HOA fees. Can't say I blame them. It's a steep cost, and they're paying $385 a month in their HOA fee. What are they getting out of it? And they got a notice on it that the fees could jump even more. It goes into, of course, rising cost of labor, they say, supplies, contracts, utilities, resources, energy, everything we've been covering over the past couple of weeks, which we're still going to be covering some more of. So stay tuned. But they require a lot of attention, as what the HOA states, requiring the fees to go up and up and up. And then, of course, insurance costs. Now, costs with everything, as we've noted, insurance, interest rates, utilities, food, products in general, the supply going down to a lumber yard. You can't get a 2x4 for less than what, $4 now. Uh, that's just insane. Now, in that one, as an alternative, this board, the HOA board, told the members, or the homeowners, sorry, that they're proposing a smaller increase, which about 17%. However, they'd also have to pay a lump sum of 3,000 up front. So it would lower the HOA fee, but you'd be paying another lump sum up front. Does that amount to the same cost? Probably. Now, in quotes, it does say if this special assessment is not approved, monthly assessments may need to rise significantly, potentially exceeding the $800 to cover that. Well, how? I mean, to me, it sounds like a localized socialism in a community. And your HOA may not even be local to you. It might be one of these companies that runs multiple ones in a vast area or over different, you could almost say different cities or possibly different states, depending on the company. And, this was an article through KSL, of course, so you could probably look it up here, but, big KSL reached out to him for comment. Nobody responded. This was into an argument. They say, I didn't see anything about Gephardt, so I don't think it was one of his stories that he does. If here, about Gephardt. But again, this family, they're just worried about making ends meet. The fees going up, the HOA costs going up, insurance going up, taxes. I can relate. Their quote was, it's going to be really difficult for them to move. The listing's going to say we have an $800 HOA fee. Would you buy a home with an $800 HOA fee or a condo? I wouldn't. They continue that if it doubles, there's no way they're going to ever be able to move out of where they are. So they feel stuck. I can't say blame them. If you look at costs right now, my mortgage is still lower than rent in most places. So if I get in trouble where I am with insurance costs going up, interest rates, and I don't even have an HOA, go try to find an apartment right now. It's insane. It's not realistic what people are asking for at all. Now, in going through some of these items with the HOAs we were talking about, one of the cases I had seen was some of the stipulations that certain HOAs can impose. Again, the fine print, so make sure you look into them. This was not in Utah. This was down south, I believe, in Georgia. But one of the HOAs, it was a story that was done about this family that had bought a home there, and a really pretty home. The HOA that they had signed up for was charging fees and interest on those fees and penalties for the fees not being paid while the home was vacant. So before they even lived there. Once they had purchased the home, they then were liable for those fees as part of the contract they had agreed to. Fine print, this was skipped over. Guess this went on for quite a while, and what I saw through the case was that it had gone through something about almost $30,000. They had paid off 8,000 already and still owed 22. That's insane. You don't even own property. You haven't lived there and you're liable for those fees. That goes into what I was talking about on larger companies. Now, this goes into a local story. This was in Kaysville, I believe. And it's a very, very, very large, very well-known company in Utah. I won't say the name just for particulars, but this was an HOA up in Kaysville that they were running into some legalities, fee switches. And what had happened is the HOA was told that they had to transfer the actual ownership and board, the management, so to say, of that HOA from this large company to something more local. Had to do with local business interests, and we'll just say the new sports arena and area downtown, things of that nature. What they found though is once they transferred that HOA to an individual, this individual had served on the board for different corporation names. You could call them shell companies if you'd like. It was transferred to that individual. That individual had transferred it to another shell company and then transferred it to a third party, which was another company that was actually owned by the original company. What was scary about it is that company was the one that originally had control of the HOA to begin with. How deep can you really look into all these things? They were all signed on the same day. It's not really possible that anybody would really know that. We had a similar issue down if you're in Utah County. There was one down, I believe it's Vineyard area, that was having a problem with their HOA. And now they have an issue with the parking in that zoned area. And the city council is trying to blame the HOA owners, which are locals. They are trying to just help run the HOA. They saw an opportunity to make their area more positive and grow. And this council is saying they're liable when they're really not. And it's just got a lot of hearsay, he and she. I don't know. To me, it's a lot of trouble. I don't want to say too many words to get myself in trouble that way. But HOAs, COAs, POAs, on the pro side, I can see the appeal. They'll pay a small fee and your neighborhood's taken care of. On the con side, I have heard a lot more stories on the con side that you're not able to customize your yard. I mean, want to put a bird bath there or change your mailbox, maybe update your address on your garage door, maybe paint your door a different color. Not going to happen. Then you'll get fined for it or discharged out of your home. I did have a friend that commented on this one. I do want to read out to it. I'm not going to give particulars just because I'm not sure the particular area they're in, but it goes to suit of what we were talking about. They had mentioned that their HOA went up to 42%. And they stated that they're basically paying for the entire town because what they're using those fees for was like the town hall, public repairs, maintenance on the property, general maintenance, concert halls, decorations, fireworks displays, food trucks, concerts, and doesn't really include what the assessments were for the driveways that they didn't need. They just went on to say that the homeowners were paying for all of it with the HOA fees while everybody was coming in to enjoy the recreation, the concerts, the events that were happening, and not even contributing. It's businesses just taking profit off people owning their home. It seems pretty drastic to me. Again, there's some other negative stories about HOAs I've heard in the past for sure with friends and actually being liable for a bicycler that was just in the neighborhood. And because their sidewalk had a little break in it from winter weather, we have that here in Utah. They were liable for it. They ended up causing a whole scene in court and their insurance costs and et cetera. And they almost got kicked out of their residence just for not maintaining their sidewalk. Again, I'm not going to go into particulars. It's just these are things that are scary about HOAs. It is a localized form of control. It goes into you will own nothing and be happy in a lot of ways. Again, would love your opinion on them. Please post below. I know a lot of happy homeowners in Utah that have HOAs that have no complaint. So I don't want to ruin that for you. I just want to make sure you're aware and look into them. But please comment down below. We'd love to hear your topics. And if you have information we can review or a story you'd like us to do on it, please let us know below. For one, hope you have a fantastic week. I look forward to bringing you some more stories breaking soon. And well, we'll talk to you probably in a couple days. Thanks so much for joining Utah News. We'll talk to you.